Hello everyone, welcome to BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. I am BC and we are here to talk about offbeat bass gear. And the piece of offbeat bass gear we're going to be talking about today is this bass right here from the good folks at Aluminati Guitars. Let me give you kind of the backstory on this and we'll dig into the instrument, some of the neat things about it and what it does. First, I'm going to start off by showing you sort of what I started out playing back when I was doing a lot of gigging. This was the first bass I ever owned. Not this one, but this model. This is a PV Foundation. They made these through the 80s and 90s. What I really loved about these basses, they had a really smooth, really fast neck. Loved everything about them, actually. First bass I ever owned. I probably should have stopped with that. I didn't, so now I own a ton of these, more Foundations than any man should own, but that's okay. And what I noticed about these basses, the one thing I really didn't like about them was, and it was, I think maybe every bass would do this actually, at least a lot. So if we were doing a lot of gigs in the summertime, you would have, July and August, super hot, super swampy, super ugly weather. You'd be doing, firemen's picnics, backyard carnivals, private parties. You'd do stuff by a lake or something. You'd be out in the heat, the humidity. Then that night, you'd be in the air-conditioned confines of some club somewhere and doing a gig there. Rinse and repeat 2 or 3 nights. Then you'd come in midweek for rehearsals and you'd notice that the bass, the neck was starting to buzz a bit. So I got to be pretty good at adjusting the truss rod with the old PV wrench and the tilt screw, which I love on PV basses. Tilt screw helped a lot too. But this being back in the 90s, it was sort of, the tail end of when Steinberger was really big. Got a chance to play a Steinberger bass, really loved them. Down the road a little bit, I'll do some videos on some of the headless basses I own because I could never afford a Steinberger. But I knew it had the composite neck, the graphite neck. I always thought that was really neat. And I also had the chance, once in a while I'd play a used Kramer bass. They were floating around. They weren't too much money. Wish I bought them then. These are the aluminum neck Kramers from the 70s and early 80s. This is pre sort of super strat Kramers with the ESP necks and the Floyd Roses. This is the aluminum neck with the weird forked headstock. And I remember playing them. I thought the aluminum neck felt really weird, and I would ask some of the guitar players I knew, some guitar instructors, ask them why these things were pretty cheap and why they never caught on. What they told me was they're aluminum necks, but they warp. The necks warp. And that never made sense to me. And I thought, well, maybe they do. I don't know. But I kind of filed that away. And also at this time, this is when modulus graphite was really, the state of the art in basses. If you could afford a modulus bass, you had a quality instrument. I couldn't afford one, but I did play a PV bass that had a graphite neck, and it felt really kind of cold and very sterile to me. So I wasn't really completely happy with that either, but I sort of thought, someday maybe I'd really like to put together a completely, weatherproof bass, kind of for lack of a better term. So I kind of stuck a pin in that, and lo and behold, many years later, we have COVID. That descends, and everybody's got too much free time on their hands. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll invest in some kind of a bass build, maybe with an aluminum neck, maybe with a graphite neck, or maybe a little bit of both, which brings me to this bass. So I commissioned the good folks at Aluminati Guitars to make me an Aluminati Andromeda bass neck, which is the bass you see before you. Took a few months to get it because, of course, everything was backlogged during COVID. So it did finally arrive, and they did a really good job on it. And I'm just going to kind of walk you through what it's like to have an aluminum neck, my impressions of it, my thoughts, so that maybe if you're looking to get one, give the guys at Aluminati some consideration. So the first thing about this bass is the fact that it cannot be adjusted in any conventional manner because there's no truss rod. You're not going to adjust relief into or out of this neck. So more on that a bit later, but one of the more interesting things is, So what do you do if you want to adjust the action, particularly in the first position? Well, you use the nut. The nut is adjustable and the nut can be shimmed. When I got this bass, I found that the neck was a little lower than I liked the action, especially in the first position. So I shimmed the nut and got the string height to spec, got it where I liked it, and we were sort of good to go. One thing I have noticed about this bass, and it's not as pronounced now because I'm aware of it. When I first got this bass, I found myself, really, my arms were a little achy after playing it, a little sore, and I couldn't figure out why. And then it finally hit me. I was so used to playing wooden-necked instruments where the bass will resonate, the notes will resonate, you'll feel them in the neck. Well, that's not happening here. So I found myself, death gripping the neck with my fretted hand to try to, feel that vibration, that resonation that really wasn't there. It wasn't resonating. Once I got aware of that and could kind of catch myself doing it, it became a lot easier and a lot more comfortable. So that was sort of one thing I had to learn how to do. Another thing with these basses is, as I mentioned, you're not going to adjust the neck to add relief. So whatever the radius is when the neck is milled, and in this case the graphite fretboard put on, that's the radius you're going to have. You can't really adjust the radius and add bow or add relief or anything like that. So I poked around a little bit online. There are some aluminum neck forums and aluminum bass forums, and some people actually had said they addressed it by literally bending the neck in a press, which I thought was a bad idea on every conceivable level. Did not want to do that. So I basically just resigned myself to trying to play this bass with a softer touch because it is a very, very, very flat radius. And that's one thing to know about these basses going in. Because this is almost a custom build, perhaps, and I didn't know it at the time, or I would have done it, you could ask when it's built at Aluminati, hey, this is the fretboard radius I want, can you do that? I imagine they probably could, but that's just kind of my musings. There are some upsides to this. As far as thumb slapping goes, I can, slap on this bass really faster than I can on any other bass I have. And you get a really good kind of growly twang to this too. So if you like kind of a very kind of growling, kind of rough sort of, a Geddy Lee kind of tone or a John Entwistle kind of tone, you can definitely get that with this bass. Also, I think if you were into neck tapping and doing a lot of sort of Stu Ham stuff and some of the polyphonic stuff, I think you really could get the action incredibly low on this and just fly around. So there are some advantages to it. In my case, I think it's still, from a playing standpoint, kind of a work in progress. I just have to sort of discipline myself to play with a lighter touch than I typically do. I don't notice any loss of sustain in the instrument because of the aluminum neck and the graphite fretboard. I think that all comes from the pickups. There's a lot of resonance in the body, certainly, but I don't think any sustain is lost by the fact that you have a neck that's not wood. I went with the graphite fingerboard because my thought was, if I have a graphite fingerboard on this, if there are issues with the neck expanding and contracting due to temperature, the fingerboard will take care of that. It'll sort of prevent that and hold it in place. And it seems to be working. I mean, I think that, if you're looking at aircraft grade aluminum, the little micro changes and expanding and contracting, that really doesn't make a big deal. For a musical instrument, it does. And I think the graphite fretboard really eliminated that. Now, I've not used this outside in the summer or anything like that, but I've pulled it in and out of hot, cold, just to kind of test the theory, and I think it's worked. I really do. So, other things to consider, this bass actually has stainless steel frets. It is the only bass I have with stainless steel frets, and I don't notice any difference. I really do not. I will upload with this video specs from Aluminati on the neck, and I'll also upload some audio files so you get a better sense of what this sounds like than coming through my little PV combo here. So as far as impressions go, I think if you're looking for something that's going to be a neck you can set and forget, and if you can pick the radius right out of the gate, I think there's a lot to be said for doing this. I mean, this neck's never going to warp. If you can spring for the graphite fretboard and have that added, you're going to be able to do away with the issue of the aluminum shifting. And the bass itself is not that neck heavy, actually. I thought it would be much more neck heavy than it is. They do a lot of milling of the neck, so that takes away the weight to a certain degree. And I think that it really is a very playable instrument. It just feels different, and you have to adapt yourself to it a little bit. They are using Spurzl locking tuners on this. It is the only locking tuner bass I have. It's kind of a neat feature, actually. I suppose it helps a bit with tuning stability, but I didn't notice it, really a real profound change. The neck specs themselves, this feels to me much like a P bass neck. It's a little wider, I think, than a J bass, but Andromeda provides kind of the particulars, Aluminati I should say, on their Andromeda necks. So I'll put that up in the chat. So I hope you guys found this interesting. I hope you found it informative. And like I said, if you're interested in an aluminum neck instrument, maybe check out Aluminati. I think this was a lot of fun to put together, and it was a good time. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you all have a really good day. Thanks very much. I'm BC, and this is BC's Offbeat Bass Gear. Stay safe.